You are able to schedule chart interpretation sessions with me until April 30th, meaning until April 30th, you can sign up to schedule a session that will be sometime in the spring or summer. After April 30th, the link below will point to a wait list wherein you'll get first pick the next time I open my books. Also, I made this calendar. The reverse side is white and set in Helvetica, and it's discounted because it's April now. And if you get a chart interpretation session, it is further discounted. The moon is waxing. However, it is eclipse season. By eclipse season in astrology, we mean the time in between eclipses. Also, if you want to be really safe, you can consider eclipse season the entire time that the sun is in the sign in which it will be eclipsed. So the entire time the sun is in Taurus, which would be April 19th through May 20th. And a more intense version of eclipse season is in between the two eclipses that occur each 6 months. Sometimes there are 3, but normally there are 2. And right now, that would be April 30th through May 15th, eclipse season. There's a solar eclipse in Taurus, April 30th, and a lunar eclipse in Scorpio, May 13th. So the moon is waxing, but first of all, if you do any sort of lunar magic, that is considered contraindicated for eclipse seasons. Lots of people consider eclipses like triple full moons and triple dark moons, but for the most part, it's not a good idea to do any ritual activations that have anything to do with abundance around eclipses. But I feel like that's a whole separate video. The solar eclipse on April 30th is in Taurus. The eclipse axis is in Taurus and Scorpio. The north node of the eclipse axis is in Taurus, and the south node is in Scorpio. Whatever part of your chart Taurus and Scorpio is, you'll have the more button in Taurus. Energy and attention and material manifestation wanting to happen in the Taurus part of your chart. Embodiment, control. And in the Scorpio part of your chart, it's more like the less button. So there's a letting go, a releasing, which is very in line with the significations of Scorpio anyway. So something to let go of in the Scorpio part of your chart. The energy wants to go to the Taurus part of your chart. But so for the most part, endeavors in the Taurus part of your chart might tend to go well, if a bit unwieldy because it's eclipse season and you also have Uranus in Taurus. So expect the unexpected. I keep saying that. However, you want to look at it like the Taurus part of your chart a little bit skeptically. Make sure that that's what you really want, because sometimes just energy and material manifestation goes towards the north node and it can kind of run out of control, like you're taking some sort of weird drugs to increase performance, like performance enhancing drugs. Like be careful with your body, or you could get in trouble or whatever. And then the south node, if you're not ready to let go of something, or if you're resisting letting go of something, the south node can have the effect during eclipses of depriving you of, taking away in a sort of a ruthless way. This will be especially prominent if you're in a moon-ruled year or a sun-ruled year. It's eclipse season, so there's potential for it to be all entangled with unexpected stuff that feels contrary to the normal flow of life. The eclipse axis, it's an axis. Most of the planets, all of the planets and bodies in the data visualization of an astrological chart turn counterclockwise. So like this, from where you're looking. And the nodes go the opposite. They're the only bodies that go the opposite direction. They're not even bodies, they're shadow bodies. They're just calculated points. They don't physically exist. Things mean what they mean in astrology because of what they are. So things that happen during eclipses can have a feeling of being against the regular flow of life. Also, they tend to bring up things that have been brewing for a long time, under the surface, and they tend to show themselves during eclipses or the time in between eclipses. And the whole thing is a process. The whole time of the North Node and South Node in Taurus and Scorpio, respectively, amounts to an approximately 1.5 year process where you're investing in the Taurus part of your chart and you're releasing in the Scorpio part of your chart. And the eclipses are the times when you can kind of see what that's about. What that's about will tend to come to the surface. And that will be more or less prominent depending on the nodes in your chart and Taurus and Scorpio in your chart and what year you are in, what annual profection you're in. That would make the planets involved with these eclipses more or less prominent in your lived experience. Anyway, the solar eclipse in Taurus, normally a time when you would literally plant seeds for things you want to go well over time, especially regarding materiality, physical things, or material resources. However, the eclipse light is weird. Emotions are intense. There's potential to, because of temporary mental and physical states, initiate things that end up being very permanent. I like to treat the eclipses as a temple made of time, especially the time in between eclipses, where mostly I acknowledge that my emotions are going to be heightened, most likely, and the emotions of others. It's a time where I tread lightly with myself and with others. And then actual actions to do during eclipses. Meditation is a good one, just contemplation. However you do that. You could do that in so many different ways, other than just sitting quietly. But I like to do that. And cleaning is really good, especially with a lunar eclipse on the South Node, like the one that's coming up on May 15th. Cleaning, getting rid of stuff, just releasing things from your life that no longer serve you. With the solar eclipse in Taurus, you're going to be identifying more intensely with whatever part of your chart pertains to the sign of Taurus. And this eclipse is ruled by Venus. Venus rules the sign of Taurus. And it's kind of, if we're going to have an eclipse, it's sort of the best case scenario. Because Venus is in Pisces, where she is exalted. I'm using a female pronoun for Venus because that feels good to me right now. But in Jyotish, Venus is Shukra, and he's like a glamorous man. Anyway, Venus is in Pisces right now, where she is exalted. And Venus is conjunct Jupiter in Pisces. Jupiter rules the sign of Pisces. So Jupiter, the greater benefic, and Jupiter is very dignified. So Jupiter stuff functions well. In addition, this Venus-Jupiter conjunction occurs on the degree of Venus's maximum exaltation. It's on the one hand, the Venus-Jupiter conjunction and whatever's happening in Taurus, what happens to the planet happens to the house. So that's good for Taurus and Libra. But it's eclipse season with Uranus co-present. So that makes it a little potentially chaotic. It makes the Venus-Jupiter conjunction less good. On the other hand, if we're going to have an eclipse, it might as well be ruled by Venus conjoining Jupiter at Venus's degree of exaltation. So it's the best case scenario, or the for an eclipse, or the least worst for Venus conjoining Jupiter with problems. I don't know if I said that right. Anyway, hopefully you get the point. If you have questions, you can leave a comment. The Venus-Jupiter stuff could be subject to some sort of interruption. Or it's Venus conjunct Jupiter, but the light, if we consider astrology, the study of light, is like a black light It's like you can see things that you normally can't see in regular daylight, and you can't see things that you would normally see in regular daylight. Did I say that right? Hopefully I did. Also, Venus is sextiling Pluto, so there's an opportunity to connect with whatever you are going through in the winter, November through early March, when Venus was transiting Capricorn, and when Venus conjoined Pluto December 11th, December 24th, and March 3rd. There's some sort of like potentially beneficial connection with that. And this week we have both benefics contacting Pluto. On the 3rd, we have Jupiter sextiling Pluto. That's interesting considering what was happening in the winter with those like November, December, January Pluto contacts with Venus. Venus enters Aries May 2nd. So that's a very different, Venus has been very dignified since April 5th. And on May 2nd, Venus will enter Aries where she's not dignified again. So we had problematic Venus all winter. And then we got like some really amazing Venus time in April. And when May starts, May 2nd, we have Venus in her sign of detriment, Aries. So it's Venus in Mars's sign, which is like, it's embattled, it's temporary, it's like get married and then get divorced and then marry someone else and then do that 5 times. Venus in Aries is like Venus, the planet of relating, is in Aries where it's like embattled and very like self-focused and wanting to prove the self and engaging in conflict in order to do that. So when the planet that is about relation and beauty and physical bonds and embodied pleasures is in Aries, it's like loves war. So it's kind of like, it's complicated, it's contradictory. Venus will be in Aries until May 28th. So then on May 3rd, we have Jupiter sextile Pluto. So this week, early in the week, benefics contact Pluto. The 4th through the 6th, we have the Sun conjoining Uranus on the 4th in between eclipses, and the Sun sextiling Mars. So we have this like Mars, Sun, Uranus. So like the self, our identity, leadership, connecting with the warlord planet and connecting with unexpected, earth-shaking instability or rebellion. So there's like leadership, war, rebellion stuff, the 4th through the 6th. When I think about Uranus, the way I've been thinking about Uranus in the fixed signs recently has been like, there's a change, but it's in a fixed sign. So like the change is like, it's like this now. And then there'll be like another change later where it's like this now. Like this is how it's going to be for a while, but then it changes again. And it's like this permanently, but it's not permanent because Uranus is in a fixed sign. P.S. The North Node in Taurus, especially with Mercury there last, like during the waxing moon, I feel like with Mercury, just like a little postmortem on the last lunation, Mercury conjoining the North Node, I feel like it's like you ordered a single unit of something, but you were delivered a truckload. So this Mars-Uranus, Sun-Uranus, Sun-Mars stuff with the North Node in Taurus is connecting to that truckload of whatever. All that is happening with the North Node in between eclipses while the moon is waxing. So Mars sextile Uranus on the 4th, Sun conjunct Uranus on the 4th, Sun sextile Mars on the 6th is like, all of that is like entangled with muchness. And then the first quarter moon is on the 8th. We're in between eclipses. So all this is happening. And if you could just like, only you know what you need to do in your life, but being observant, being very present with what is happening, cleaning, having quiet time to metabolize potentially intense emotions. The things that happen in between eclipses can end up being more significant than you might have thought, which is why things like ritual magic are contraindicated during this time. On the 9th, like late at night, Mercury stations retrograde. From April 30th to the time Mercury stations retrograde on the 9th, when Mercury is in shadow, when Mercury is transiting the degrees to which it will later retrograde back, but it's not retrograde yet, I consider that time, for me, it depends on your relationship with Mercury, but for me, that time is sometimes more glitchy than the actual Mercury retrograde. But also, the first part of Mercury retrograde, before Mercury conjoins the Sun, which will be after the lunar eclipse in Scorpio, that time is more glitchy. So we have eclipse season, co-present Uranus with Mercury retrograde. It's just like things might be glitchy and go wrong, and emotions might be heightened. So just know that you're not doing it wrong if like things go wrong and you get upset or somebody else does. Everybody give each other a break. It's a weird time. And so, hang on, sorry. After that, the Sun conjoins the North Node on May 12th. Oh, I forgot to say, on the 10th of May, Jupiter enters Aries. So that's a big shift. We go from Jupiter being dignified in the gentle sign of Pisces, where it's sort of like, it's a yin sign. It's like a sanctuary style Jupiter. Now it's moving into the sign of Aries. So whatever part of your chart coincides with the sign of Aries, that's going to get a Jupiter boost. Because Jupiter, like, it does all right in Aries. It's not like in detriment or anything. But it's Jupiter now works for Mars. Mars is in Pisces, so Jupiter's sign. So that's nice. They kind of like, they can help each other out. But Jupiter works for the war planet now. So if there's something involving your drive or making a decision to move on something or to charge forth with your I can't think of the word. It's just like energy and drive and your bravery or courage. All of that is boosted by Jupiter. Like Jupiter will help you do that. But it's not the same like as Jupiter in Pisces, where you can just chill and it's kind of a calm, enjoyable, benefic time. This is more like Jupiter helping with malefic energy. So Jupiter in Aries. Jupiter will be in Aries until October, and then it will go back into Pisces. So that's changing the vibe for the rest of the year. So yeah, Jupiter changes signs in between eclipses during a Mercury retrograde. So that's interesting. It's like not the same like forward movement, like stuff is going to want to be acted on, but it's going to be reassessed. And then the Sun conjoins the North Node on the 12th. So maximum muchness for the Sun, maximum egotistical stuff for Taurus natives or people in a Sun-ruled year or people Leo risings, people for whom the Sun is prominent. So there could be a sort of like a superhero energy, but one to watch out for because great downfalls due to hubris are just as likely. And we're in between eclipses, so it's a time to be careful. And then the Sun squares Saturn on the 15th. So there's something about like, whatever happens with Mars, the 4th through the 6th, with like embattledness and victoriousness is gonna like come into some conflict, or it's going to be like restricted somehow when the Sun squares Saturn on the 15th, which is the day of the lunar eclipse in Scorpio. And the part of Scorpio that the eclipse happens, late Scorpio, is about like disintegrating material stuff and like taking it back to like the original like base material so that you can turn it into something else. So there's like an energy of breaking down for this full moon. And afterwards, it can give you like a sort of a rich soil to begin again later. But for right now, it's just about releasing and letting go. Lunar eclipses on the south node are not great. They're kind of hard on the body and not great for like money and stuff. And if there's things you're willing to let go of in the Scorpio part of your chart, you can keep an eye on that. That doesn't sound like very good advice. Hang on. I feel like I'm more maudlin in between these eclipses. Yeah, and also the lunar eclipse occurs sextile the ruler of Scorpio, Mars. So that's kind of interesting where, your ability to connect with your warrior spirit, to connect with your ability. The lunar eclipse in Scorpio then is squaring Saturn. And it's also sextile Mars. So there's an opportunity here to connect with your warrior spirit, your impulse and capacity, as Richard Tarnas would put it, for courage, bravery, energy, decisiveness. Actively letting go of something or actively releasing the results could be beneficial during this time. Lunar eclipses are not great for material things, for the body, for money and resources. So letting go of anything you might want from the Scorpio part of your chart is beneficial. The south node, where this lunar eclipse takes place, is not great for material concerns, but it can be very good for spiritual matters. So things like meditation or, whatever you might do to deepen your connection with the spiritual, whatever that means for you. That might sound cliche to you, but the material is not all there is. And the lunar eclipse in Scorpio on May 15th is here to teach us that. So that's why I treat this time in between eclipses as a temple where I get rid of stuff and try to just meditate and be quiet in between whatever else I have to do. It's like I observe the time in between eclipses as an austere holiday, kind of. But you don't have to do that. You can do whatever you want. And again, it's also squaring Saturn. So there's a theme of this eclipse is in direct contact with the malefics. Malefics are called that because usually it's not a good time. It doesn't mean they're evil. It just means that, things like restriction, patience, having to be disciplined, that Saturn stuff, having to enforce or be subject to boundaries, more Saturn stuff, or, having to cut ties, which is a Mars thing, or defend yourself, stand up for others, fight for what you believe in. The Saturn stuff will be necessary. The sun is squaring Saturn, and there will be an opportunity to enact Mars stuff during this eclipse. Anything you let go of goes back into the soil to be turned into something like a substrate that you can grow in later, if that makes sense. And then on the 17th, which is I'll be talking about next time, but I think it's important to note here that, so this is a Mars-ruled lunar eclipse with that lunation configured in a sextile to Mars. So an opportunity to do Mars stuff. Mars is applying to Neptune. Mars conjoins Neptune on the 17th, which I'll talk about next time, but I'll also talk about it now a little bit. I think it's significant that the eclipse is ruled by Mars configured to Neptune. There could be some confusion around what you're letting go of, or it could just be something that turns out to be deeply spiritual or somehow connected to the fabric of reality in a way that kind of feels fated. Eclipses can bring events that feel like they were supposed to happen, or they're fated, or, you know, all of time converged to make this happen. I mean, that's every moment, but also a lunar eclipse on the south node, you can connect that to, you know how the moon waxes and wanes. And this period, May 30th through May 15th, is a waxing moon period. So the things that happen, they're things that are like beginning and carrying forth. So the unexpected eclipse stuff that might happen is stuff that has longer term implications in an increase sort of way. But a lunar eclipse on the south node is like extreme, like the waning afterwards, which will not be in between eclipses, but it's the waning moon after a lunar eclipse is bound to be pretty extreme. And again, that extreme decrease can impart spiritual benefits, but that's very easy to say when you're not going through it. I've undergone some pretty rough lunar eclipse on the south node transits, and they don't feel great. So it's easy to say that you can get spiritual benefits from a hard time, but I know that in the moment, that might not be so helpful to hear. But yeah, a lunar eclipse on the south node. Matter is not all there is. Release the results in the Scorpio part of your chart. Keep an eye on what you're trying to achieve in the Taurus part of your chart, and know that everything is subject to layers of chaos that they might not otherwise be if it weren't eclipse season.